The southern part of the city was waking up reluctantly, as if with a hangover. The damp air spread across the cracked asphalt, as if it was hiding something, either memories of the night shots or a premonition of a morning nightmare. Yellow light still glowed in the windows of the houses, dim and tired, like the eyes of an old man who had seen too much and had long since stopped being surprised. Lauren could feel the dampness of her thin t-shirt sticking to her back. Her belly was showing, 6 months, but she stubbornly stuck to her routine. Every morning she walked the same creaky path, past a dilapidated garage, an old skate park where homeless people now hung out, and a boarded-up store whose walls were covered in graffiti and anger. Jasper, her pit bull, walked beside her, his massive head bobbing slightly, picking up scents and tensions Lauren no longer felt or didn't want to feel. This morning was no different, almost. Except for the silence, an unnatural, oppressive silence. Even the birds fell silent. No sound of an engine, no creaking stroller, no cry of a child from the next yard. Only her footsteps, muffled and cautious, and Jasper's breathing, almost in sync with her own. Shh, shh. Lauren knew this was what happened before a storm. The locals called it the time of the glassy gaze, when the city stared at you, unblinking, as if waiting to see how you would react. And now, she felt its gaze. The feeling of someone else's presence was as persistent as a sticky residue on her skin. She froze at the crossroads, instinctively, like a deer in the forest hearing a twig snap. Jasper raised his ears, sucked in the air, and growled, not loudly, but with that hoarse tension that rarely appeared in him, only when there was a real threat around the corner. She looked up. There he was, standing on the porch of the house across the street. A man. White, about 60, stocky, with a fleshy face and ashen stubble. A mug in one hand, a cigarette in the other, with thick smoke pouring out. But what Lauren remembered most was not his face. It was the way he looked at her. Eyes, cold, with a hunter's squint. No interest, no surprise, just shameless contempt. The same kind Lauren had learned to read since she was a child. You shouldn't be here. Just not out loud. Not yet. She wanted to walk on by, just move on, like she had done hundreds of times, but something inside her trembled. The child, perhaps, or something ancient, instinctive. Her great-grandmother's voice whispering, "Turn around." She turned away, but heard it. "Well, we've come to this," he muttered loudly enough for her to hear, and now they walked dogs, dirt on 2 legs and dirt on 4. Lauren stopped. Not because she wanted to, but because her legs froze. Jasper tensed, his back arched, his tail lowered. He felt something she hadn't felt yet. Danger. She didn't look at the man. She just said, "Good morning to you too." "I was talking to a dog," he grinned. "You mutt, a pregnant bitch." Lauren's heart sank, her ears rang. She wasn't afraid for herself. She'd left that feeling behind in her teenage years. She was afraid for the baby, for the way stress might affect her, for the way hatred might seep into her blood, for Jasper, who, despite his size, was a kind dog but might not forgive a threat. She walked on, step 2, Jasper next to her, a heavy look on her back. The man shouted something after her, but the words were drowned out by the sounds of the city, which suddenly came to life again. A car drove by. A rooster crowed. A door slammed somewhere. Lauren thought it was the end, but the city was just beginning to breathe. To the right, by the old tree, behind the creaky fence, sat a girl, a teenager. She was holding a phone and looking at her, silently, without a smile, but her eyes were attentive, smart. I remember, Lauren thought. Maybe at least someone. But the thought didn't have time to finish. Footsteps behind her, fast, heavy. The man jumped off the porch. She turned around. He was already 2 meters away. And before she could say a word, he kicked Jasper, hard, in the ribs. The dog yelped, flew to the side, yelped like a wounded wolf. "Take that, you creature," the man growled. "I said, get out of here." At that moment, time stopped. The air became thick as honey. Lauren rushed to Jasper, but she didn't make it. The man stepped towards her, swung, and then something burst in her head. Her hands covered her stomach. She stepped back, but stumbled. Her foot slid on the wet asphalt. The fall was fast, the impact with the curb sharp. She heard a crunch, and it took her a moment to realize it wasn't a stone. It was something inside her. Jasper, despite the pain, jumped up and bit. Blood, the man screamed. Kicked the dog a second time, harder, but it was too late. The girl by the tree was filming everything, without stopping. Not a single frame wavered. Lauren was lying on the ground. Her stomach was throbbing. Her eyes were filled with tears. Jasper was next to her, licking her hand, whining. Above her was the sky, and there wasn't a single bird in it. 5 minutes passed, or an eternity, and then a siren, people, whispers, and the first word she heard, "We saw everything. Everything was filmed. He will answer." But Lauren couldn't hear anymore. There was too much pain inside her, and silence. He stood on the porch like the king of a burnt kingdom, leaning against the cracked paint bar, his pajamas stained with grease and old memories. The cigarette in his fingers burned slowly, like the patience of someone who lives by hate. He saw Lauren every morning, saw her walk past, with that belly, that dog, that black skin that he thought stained the air, the neighborhood, the country. He didn't speak right away, just stared at her, his gaze burning into her form, scanning her as if he had the right to do so. He didn't need a reason. He didn't need a cause. He was one of those people who thought his blood was older, his house cleaner, his street whiter than it had any right to be. Cigarette smoke slid across his face like part of a ritual, slow and poisonous. He narrowed his eyes when Jasper stopped and growled. The devil would have a lot of it, he thought, and then he did not say it with a whisper. Jasper tensed. You hear when they tell you, get back to your ghetto before it's too late. She stopped, not because she was scared, but because she couldn't pretend it wasn't happening any longer. She turned around, slowly. There was no fear on her face, only weariness, the weariness of those who have heard the same thing 1,000 times, endured it 1,000 times, hoped 1,000 times that next time it would be quieter, and been wrong 1,000 times. He walked down the first step, spat on the ground, and said, "Why are you so impudent? Do you think that because you've got a belly you can do anything? Did one of your jackals get you pregnant? Or maybe your dog? It really does seem like your dog is closer to you than anyone else. I wouldn't be surprised. They love you." He chuckled. It was short, joyless, poisonous. Jasper lunged forward, but Lauren held him back. With difficulty, the vein in her neck bulged. She took a step back, as if to tell herself, don't give in. But he'd already crossed the line. Look at her, walking around, showing off like someone was interested. Those lips, that belly, everything on display. That's all you do. You come here, you reproduce, you scream at night. You're a pain in the ass. This is my neighborhood, my home. And all you do is shit. Everything you touch turns to dirt. Lauren was silent. She knew he was provoking. He wanted a reaction. He wanted her to scream, to hit, to fight back, so he could call the cops, so he could become the victim, so the system that had always been on his side could work like clockwork again. But she said nothing. She just looked at him, calmly, directly. He was furious. Get that mug off of you, do you hear me? I'm talking to you normally. Does anyone ever talk to you normally? Or are you used to only responding to shouts? I've seen how you live. Cockroaches, stench, screaming, 5 children from different children. And then you go to the neighbors asking for help. I'm not going to support you. I've lived here for 37 years. And what about you? Who are you anyway? You're nobody. Got it? Nobody. She slowly turned her back to him, as if putting an end to his tirade, and she walked on. He shouted, "You're ignoring me, right? Well, go on. Go before I come down and show you who's boss here." Jasper growled again. And then the man added, "And take this creature of yours. Do you think it's a dog? It's a freak, just like you. Both of you should be chained and put in a cage, as is proper. Dirt should live with dirt. She quickened her pace. Her fingers were shaking. Her breathing was ragged. Her legs were buckling. But she didn't stop. She knew that if she stopped, she would break. And if she broke, he would win. There was a crash behind her. He threw it on the porch, or into the air, or into her back. She didn't look. She just walked. But her heart was pounding in her ears like a bell. She felt the child inside her shudder. She threw up for a second. She pressed her hand to her stomach. Jasper barked. Once. Loudly. The man fell silent. For the first time in forever. The silence was heavier than his words. She turned the corner, and only then did she allow herself to squat down, covering her face with her hands. Jasper crawled up and nuzzled her. She wasn't crying. Her eyes were dry. But inside, there was pain. Not from words, from helplessness, from the fact that this was not an exception. It was the norm. Habitual. Constant. One of those with which you are born, grow up, and die. And even if you try to be higher, they will always remind you where you belong. She knew he wouldn't stop. He would cross the line. Because he always does. They start with a spit, and they end with blood. But she didn't know that the line would be crossed in an hour, and that the whole world would see her breaking, not from words, but from actions, not from looks, but from a blow, not from a system, but from one man, confident that he is the master of the street, and that she is just dirt, which can be wiped away with a foot. Before we continue, let's take a short break. Write in the comments where you listened to our stories from, whether you had similar moments in your life and how you reacted to them. It is important for us to know your opinion, and if you like what we do, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss new stories. And now, let's continue. He came down the steps with that slow, predatory gait that you don't walk down to talk to, but to hunt, walking heavily but confidently, as if each step confirmed his right to be there and hers did not. And she felt it a second before she heard it, because the air around her grew thick like before a thunderstorm, and Jasper growled again, but quieter, deeper, no longer warningly, but threateningly, and she knew the dog was ready to protect. But that was what scared her. He would protect. But who would protect him if things went wrong? And before she could even turn around properly, she heard his voice again. Closer now, louder now, hoarsely now, with not a drop of fear in it, only poison, malice, and a deep-rooted confidence in impunity. I told you! Get the fuck out of here before I didn't call the right people. You and your stinking dog. You're both a threat. Have you even looked at yourself, you black slut? With a belly like a hippo and that monster on a leash, do you really think you have the right to walk around here? This is a white people's street, okay? You weren't born here and you shouldn't give birth here. You're a mistake. And what's inside of you is another one. I've seen your kind. You're crawling like cockroaches, one after another, and you're all the same. Always angry, always yelling, always messing with the wrong neighborhoods. And this isn't just outrage, baby. This is the truth, and it's time you heard it. 'Cause no one is waiting for you here, never loved you and never will. You've been here from the start like a stain, like mold, like the smell of rotten meat. Do you think people don't notice the stench that follows you? It's in every word, in every step, in every movement of your fat thighs, in every fold of your skin. Yes, I said skin, because you're not a woman, you're an animal, and not just any animal, but a street animal. Wild bitches like you are born in basements and die in alleys, and if it weren't for this lousy status of yours as victims, you would have been crushed like insects long ago. But you've already swelled up like a parasite, right? 6 months, you say? Congratulations. Your child will soon become another problem for taxpayers, because you don't work, you don't study. All you do is walk your dog to show them. Look, I'm here. Get used to it. But we won't get used to it. Do you hear? Never. We lived here before you, and we will live here after you. And you will disappear, and we will not notice, because you are nothing. And you have always been nothing, even in the eyes of your father, if you had one, although it is unlikely. People like You are not raised. They are only impregnated and abandoned over and over again, and you know it yourself. So why are you staring at me as if you have a voice? Do not speak. Do not look. Do not breathe near me, understand? And put your dog away. He prevents me from breathing, just like you. His eyes are like yours. Empty, homeless, stupid. He does not know what he is doing, because he is the same as you. A burden. You bring nothing but noise and stench, and I swear to God, if he takes a step towards me, I will throw him across the street and then call the paramedics and say it was self-defense. And you know what? They will believe me because I live here. And you are a guest, and not invited, but a break-in. And people like you should have been kicked out like worms a long time ago. Because you spoil everything you touch, even the air, even the light becomes dimmer when you pass by and you think that you can ignore it. But I will not allow it, do you hear? I won't let you feel safe because you're a threat. You're a stain. And that freak inside of you is too. And if I had the power, you'd already be underground, along with your dog, because nothing alive deserves to be near you, and you can't even see. How pathetic you look, with that round belly, that sickly skin, that look in your eyes, like you're hoping someone will help you, but no one will, because you're alone here. Because people like you aren't loved, aren't saved, aren't remembered. You're forgotten right after the funeral, and there's no one to bury if something bad happens, right? They say dogs can sense death, that's why yours is barking. It probably knows you're practically a corpse, just a walking target. And I'm not even saying I'm going to do anything. No, I'm just standing there watching. And that's enough to make you shake. You're shaking, aren't you? You're holding on to the leash like it's your last thread, like the dog is your armor. But it won't save you. No animal can protect its owner from the real world. And if I had a rock, I'd throw it right into your gut, just so you could feel what it's like when hatred hits physically, when words become pain, when looks become weapons, and you couldn't prove a thing, because I'd say it was you who lunged at me, that your dog snapped, that I was just defending myself. And you know what? They'd believe me, and again, and again, and again, because people like me are believed, but not people like you. They'll ask you, what did you do to deserve this? And you won't be able to answer, because the answer is already there. You were simply born in the wrong skin, in the wrong place, at the wrong time. You're here by mistake, and your entire existence is a mistake. Like every step you take past my house, like every breath you take under my sky. Do you understand, baby? This is my sky, my sun, my earth, and you're just a shadow. And a shadow can't stay. A shadow disappears when the light gets brighter, and I'm going to make sure the light here won't let you hide anymore. He didn't just say all this. He didn't just spew venom with words. He walked, he approached, closing the distance between them, erasing the boundaries of what was permitted with each step. And there was no hesitation in his gait. He knew what he was doing. He knew that behind him was the silent power of impunity, the long-standing habit of suppressing, trampling, humiliating. And he did not consider it necessary to stop, because he saw before him not a woman, not a person, but a target, alive, black, vulnerable, with a belly that he perceived as a challenge to his understanding of purity and order. And Jasper, feeling how this man was approaching, tensed, growled, put his shoulder forward as if he had become a shield, and it clicked something inside the man, as if the very thought that some black woman and her dog could put a barrier in front of him was for him a humiliation that he could not bear. And without warning, without hesitation, without the slightest hesitation, he swung his leg and hit Jasper with such force that he flew to the side, crashed into the fence and howled, high, drawn out, with pain that tore the air, and Lauren screamed, not a human voice, not a woman's, but a scream of pure horror, of a protective instinct that burst from the very depths of her being, because she saw not just an attack on a dog, she saw a blow to the last thing she had, to the one who protected her, who was with her in moments when the whole world was against her, and she rushed to him, to Jasper, but the man was already there. He turned and swung again, this time at her, and at that moment she felt how the air became prickly, as if the city itself wanted to keep her from stepping forward. But she could. not stop, and he hit. Not on the stomach, not on the face, on the shoulder, on the collarbone, with such force that she felt the bones trembled, and losing her balance, fell to her knees next to Jasper, shielding him with her body, hugging him like a child, and screamed, "Don't touch him!" But he didn't hear, or pretended not to hear, because in his eyes burned that same old, sticky, rotten hatred, not for anything in particular, but for the very fact of her existence. And he screamed, "This is what you get for going to the wrong neighborhood. You thought this was just a walk. This is war! People like you need to be teached. And with this dog, I already showed this crap." And again a step forward, and again a swing, but Lauren raised her hand, covering her stomach. Instinct was already working separately from consciousness. She did not even understand how she ended up on the ground, how the asphalt under her became sticky, how her ears were ringing, as if someone turned on a siren, and silence, complete silence. Although the man's mouth continued to move, he was shouting something, maybe not in her direction anymore, maybe in the direction of the street, which still seemed empty, and she thought, does no one see? Because before there was always someone standing here, smoking, drinking, chatting on the phone. But today the street seemed to be deserted, as if someone had cleared it of witnesses in advance, and only one dog, wounded, lay nearby and whined, and she understood that she could not get up because her legs did not obey, and the man loomed over her, a huge shadow hunched over with a distorted face. He was breathing heavily, spitting, saying, "You thought you were untouchable, right? Pregnant? Will someone feel sorry? The like you should not be partied. You should be squeezed like trash, destroyed like parasites. You, your puppies, your old people, all of it." And then his foot moved forward again, not on her, on the dog, on Jasper, again and again. Each blow was accompanied by a sound that cut into the brain like a nail. Lauren could not scream anymore. Her voice broke, only a wheeze remained, and the hands that covered her stomach shook, and she thought, this is the end, because no one was coming out. No one was shouting stop. No one was calling for help, and she felt something warm, sticky, maybe blood, maybe water, running down her leg, and she became truly scared, because she did not feel the child, she did not feel the movement, and only then, when the man, already breathing heavily, he took a step back. She saw how, somewhere above, on the balcony, someone was standing with a phone in his hand, a shadow, a silhouette, motionless, emotionless, as if he were filming a movie, as if this was not really happening. And then she closed her eyes, not because she wanted to sleep, but because it was easier not to see the face that considered you nothing, not to see the street that was silent, not to see the sky that did not interfere, and not even hear Jasper's screams anymore, because they turned into echoes, as if everything that was happening was part of a nightmare from which she could not escape. And the man's voice suddenly became quieter, as if he was talking to himself. That's it. Maybe now he'll think about it. Maybe now he'll stop bothering me. You damn bitch. I hope you die here. I hope everything inside you dies out. I hope the dog and you and this one inside you all rot to hell. And then she realized that even if this day will end, she will not be the same anymore, because something inside her broke, not only physically, but deeper in the place where hope was kept. And if before she believed that the morning was a chance, that a walk was a breath of freedom, now she knew. Even a bright sky can be dead if it reflects evil, and evil today wore a face that will now forever remain with her. She didn't stagger right away. First there was numbness, a strange feeling as if her body no longer belonged to her, as if her bones had turned to cotton wool and her muscles had stopped obeying. And when her left leg took a step back, it found no support, as if the street itself had moved away from her. And in that moment she realized that she was losing her balance, that she couldn't stand, that gravity had won, and that there would be no pride, no fortitude, no strength left. Only a fall, slow, viscous, humiliating, like falling in the eyes of a person who looks down on you and no longer sees anything in you except the dirt on his shoe. She tried to curl up, to cover her stomach, to protect what was inside. But her hands didn't obey. They clung to air, to emptiness, to hope. And when her body hit the concrete, the sound of that impact, dull and wet, was the beginning of a new pain, the kind that burns from within, not sharp, but pulling, viscous, the kind that tell you something is wrong. And right after that, blood first inside, a feeling of a warm rush, then outside, on her pants, on the asphalt, a spreading stain in which everything was said, even if she had not yet had time to realize it. And the scream broke out on its own, short, animalistic, not from physical pain, but from horror, the same one that does not sleep for a second in the head of every pregnant woman. Horror that everything you carried, raised, protected, can disappear in an instant, because someone decided that you are nothing, because someone decided that your body is a war zone, and the curb she hit her stomach on was dirty, dusty, cold. And when she felt its sharp edge enter her ribs, she knew that there would be consequences. She did not know what, but she knew. This is no longer just a fall. This is a border after which nothing will be the same. The man stood above her, breathing hard, and as if all this were not enough, he began to laugh, quietly, out, loud, with that vile anguish that is heard only from those who enjoy pain. He said, "Now you are really lying down, as you should be, in your place. Bitch, you are covered in blood, as it should be, dirty, black, scum. I told you to go away, but you did not listen. Now lie down, let the asphalt be your friend. Maybe it is closer to you than people." And she tried to get up, on her elbows, on her knees, but fell again. She could not, because the pain was growing, from her stomach to her back, to her neck. She felt something squeezing inside her, like something was leaving, as if the life she carried was starting to move away. Or maybe it was already gone. And at that moment, Jasper exploded. He could not stand it anymore. He rushed forward, sharply, furiously, with that same animal cry that was born of fear and rage. He grabbed the man's leg, deep, greedily, with a crunch of fabric and flesh, and he screamed as he had never screamed before, because pain, real pain, came to him. Unexpectedly, it tore apart his peace, his confidence, his illusion of control, and he began to beat the dog, with his foot, his hand, his elbow. But Jasper held on, did not let go until blood gushed, and then he stepped back, thrown back, and screamed, "Bitch, I'll kill you both! You're going to die, do you hear?" He grabbed a rock from the side of the road, heavy, with sharp edges, and moved towards the dog. But Jasper was already standing between him and Lauren, wounded, limping, but ready to die, if only she would not be. Left alone in front of this beast, she heard everything, but she could not get up. She only tried to crawl. With her hands through blood, through dust, through shards of glass, and whispered something, a prayer, the name of a child whom she did not even have time to say, or maybe just please, over and over again. And the man was already swinging the rock, was about to smash the dog's head, and then from the other side of the street, someone shouted, "Hey, what are you doing?" A male voice, sharp, angry, then a second, female one. "Oh my God, he killed her!" The doors began to open, the windows began to creak, and the man froze, like an animal caught red-handed. He turned around, as if for the last time, looked at her and hissed, "This is not the end yet." Threw a stone, turned around and walked away, limping, leaving a trail of blood behind him, and Jasper turned to her, poked his nose into her face, into her cheek, as if asking, "Are you alive? Are you there?" And Lauren opened her eyes slightly, saw the sky, grey, flat, lifeless, and whispered, "Help," not knowing to whom. The dog, God, passers-by, the universe, and the street became alive again. People poured out. Someone was filming, someone was calling, someone was shouting, "Hold him, he's not far away." But all this was already behind, because Lauren's consciousness flickered like a weak lamp, and the only thing she felt was the warmth of the dog near her face, his breath, faithful, heavy, and the silence inside, in her stomach, frightening, dead. And she knew. At that moment, everything changed. Not just the day, not just life, but she herself. And now she had to not just survive, but learn to live with this, to live after the fall, to live with the memory, to live with the blood on the asphalt that no rain could wash away. Before we continue, let's take a short break. Write in the comments where you listened to our stories from, whether you had similar moments in your life, and how you reacted to them. It is important for us to know your opinion. And if you like what we do, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss new stories. And now, let's continue. He walked away like those who believe they did the right thing, that they had the right to do it, leaving behind not just a broken body, but a trail, stinking, stretched out across the sidewalk like a slug's trail. Sticky, disgusting, heavy, and there was something defiant in the way he walked, stubbornly limping, as if he knew that even if someone called, even if someone decided to intervene, it would be too late or pointless. And he knew that the truth for him was not what had happened, but what he would say when asked, because people like him had long ago learned to speak convincingly, loudly, with pathos and with hatred presented as patriotism. And he walked away, leaving her lying on the wet asphalt, cooling like a discarded sack of meat. And in his gaze, when he turned around for the last time, there was no regret, only disgust, as if he still thought she was defiling the street with her presence, and no one ran after him. No one grabbed him by the shoulder. No one shouted after him. And only silence reigned again, for a moment, before the first doors began to open, cautiously, as if people were afraid that if they came out they would become part of what was happening. And in this hesitation, there was something cowardly, but also familiar, because in such areas they had long since taught. Don't interfere, don't stick your head out, don't get caught in the crossfire, and they stood on their thresholds, looking, some with phones, some with distorted faces, some just with empty eyes, and no one came up. And only after several long minutes, when Jasper barked, loudly, drawn out, as if calling, as if begging, a woman shouted from a window, "Someone call an ambulance!" And someone finally did it. A man, about 40. In mic, his face displeased, as if he had been pulled out of a dream for some stupid reason, muttered something into the phone. "Yeah, a woman fell down here. Black, I think. Pregnant. Blood. Yeah." As if it were an inconvenience. As if it were a disruption in the daily routine and not someone's life lying on the sidewalk. And Lauren heard that voice, and she shook because she realized that even now, even after everything, no one was taking this seriously. No one was seeing her as a person. She was just an event, just an incident, just a reason for the neighbors to talk, and her breathing became intermittent, as if every word these people said was pressing on her chest, and time stretched out like dirty rubber. She didn't know how much had passed, a minute or 20, but every moment was an eternity. And Jasper was lying next to her, not breaking away, crawling closer, pressing his muzzle to her hand, howling quietly, as if he understood that a loud sound could be the last one. And when the ambulance finally arrived, with the screeching of brakes, with the sharp voices of the paramedics, with the stretcher thrown out into the street like a weapon, she could no longer open her eyes. She only felt her body being lifted, somehow quickly, roughly, but not with malice, with mechanicalness, as if they were saving not Lauren, not a woman, not a mother, but simply an object that needed to be delivered to the hospital within the golden hour. And one of the doctors asked, "Was she conscious?" And one of the neighbors answered, "Yeah, I think." She was screaming. The dog protected her there, and then she completely went quiet. And the man with the radio, without looking at her, said, "Probably shock and losses." And no one had words for who hit her. No one said, "He tried to kill her." No one called it an attack. No one called it a crime. And one of the paramedics, a heavy-set man with a sweaty forehead, when he saw Jasper with a bloody mouth, he hissed, "And what kind of creature is this? We need to get rid of it. It will bite someone. And only when the second paramedic, younger, with serious eyes, said, "He was protecting her, and he never attacked anyone else," Jasper was allowed to stay with her. He didn't jump in the car. He just stood by the wheel of the ambulance while Lauren was lifted in, and his eyes never left hers, as if he were trying to peer into that black depth where her soul clung to life, to the child, to the light. And in that silence between the car and the houses, he stood like a guard, forgetting about the pain, forgetting about the blood, and the paramedic, the young one, looked at him and muttered, "Damn, you're more loyal than most of these people." And the ambulance drove away, taking with it the woman the city had labelled unwanted. And only the dog remained, as a witness, as pain, as a truth that no one wanted to hear. Because the truth of this street was always one: don't stick your neck out, especially if you're black, especially if you're a woman, especially if you're weak. And slowly people began to return to their houses, some maybe with a sense of guilt, some of them with relief that it was over, but none of them came to Jasper, gave him water, said a word, because even now, even after everything, what they saw was not loyalty, not love, not courage. They saw a threat, and that was what was most frightening. Not that someone had hit him, but that everyone else had watched it happen and remained silent. And in that silence, it said, "You deserve it." And even when the ambulance's tracks had disappeared, and the air had become smooth again, and the noise of the city had returned, Jasper was still sitting there, as if he believed that they would bring her back, that she would come out and say, "It's okay, boy." And maybe he even knew that she wouldn't say it. But he waited because there was no other way. Otherwise, all this hell would have been in vain, and the street would be silent again. Only now, not from fear, but from a shame that no one would admit out loud. That morning, she woke up as usual, made coffee, turned on her old laptop, and automatically opened a tab with a home surveillance camera, as she did every morning, not to look, but to make sure that the world outside the window had not yet completely fallen apart. Although, to be honest, she had known for a long time. This world is rotten, fragile, and there are too many people in it who do not care about each other. The camera had been hanging above her balcony for 3 years, since the neighbour's bike was stolen, and her husband insisted on installing it. You never know who's sneaking around, and now every day she opened the image, where half the street was visible, the sidewalk opposite, the old garage, and the porch of the very house on which he was standing today, the one she had long considered dangerous, but did not voice it out loud, because there was no evidence. He seemed like just an angry old man, rude, unpleasant, always drunk, but there were plenty of them here, and each one evoked the same feeling: better to stay away. And so she sat there, sipping her coffee, and her gaze slid across the monitor, where something strange began to unfold, like a scene from a movie. First, he was on the porch. She was pregnant, with the dog, walking down the sidewalk. And then, the first screams. She didn't hear the words, but the body language spoke for itself, and her chest began to tighten. And then movement. He was coming down, walking toward her. The dog was tense. He was screaming, and then the first blow, on the dog, sharp, dirty, as if it had vented all its hatred, and the woman was screaming, falling. And this fall, heavy, helpless, like slow death, was shocking. She recoiled from the monitor because something was exploding inside her. She knew she could know, longer pretend she hadn't seen it, and she still sat there, still watched, because she couldn't tear herself away, because she had to make sure that this wasn't a fantasy, that this was the truth. And the truth turned out to be the scariest thing of all, because that here he is picking up a rock, here is a dog protecting him, here is blood, here she can't get up, and he is still screaming, and she can't hear the words, but she knows there is poison, there is filth, there is racism, it is pouring out of him like rotten water from a burst pipe. And she remembers hearing something like this from him before, how he shouted nasty things at teenagers, how he scared the neighbors' children, how he said that these niggers are taking over our neighborhood. And then it seemed like he was just old and angry. But now she saw he was dangerous. And these weren't just words, these were actions. And now she knew that if she kept quiet, she would be an accomplice. But she kept quiet. 30 seconds, exactly. She sits in silence, looking at the screen, on which the woman's blood has already mixed with the dust of the street. And something in her argues, "You don't have to. It's none of your business." And then another voice, "If you keep quiet, you're the same as them." And this second voice wins, because she understands. If not now, then never. She copies the file, transfers it to a flash drive, then to the cloud, opens social networks, uploads the video. Her fingers tremble, because she knows that as soon as it appears, everything will change, and perhaps not for the better. But she clicks publish, writes, "This is what happened on our street. No woman should have to go through this. He tried to kill her. This isn't just an assault, this is a hate crime." And she presses a button, and 10 seconds later, the screen explodes. The first likes, comments, shares, people writing, "Where was this? How horrible. He must be punished." And within a minute, she's already getting messages from local newsmen, from activists, from strangers who are thanking her and demanding justice. And she sits and still looks at the footage, because she can't believe that this happened right here, across the street, that this is not a headline, not a newspaper clipping, but their street, her neighbours, their reality. And only now, when everything has already started, when the lump in her throat has gone, does she allow herself to say out loud for the first time, "This was racism, pure, dirty, alive." And at that moment she was not just a witness. She became a voice, the one that was missing on that street when the woman was lying in blood. And now she could no longer remain silent, pretend that nothing happened, because the truth had taken shape, digital, bright, indisputable, the one that cannot be denied. But most importantly, now the whole world saw this video, and the man's face, his scream, his actions, his hatred, everything became public knowledge. And no matter what they say later, no matter how they justify themselves, no one will be able to say anymore, "We didn't know." And it was at that moment that she realized, perhaps for the first time in a long time, the truth will win, at least for a second, at least for one day. It appeared quietly at first, without a splash, without dramatic headlines, just another post from the person living across the street, as a warning, as a report, as a fact. A video 2 minutes and 38 seconds long, without editing, without music, without commentary, only footage from a surveillance camera, in which everything is visible as if in the palm of the hand, even too clearly, even too painfully. The first views came from neighbours, from those who heard the screams but did not dare to go out. They saw what they did not want to see. A blow, a fall, blood, a dog defending its owner, and an old man beating both the woman and the animal with a cruelty that was more than just anger. Someone dumps it in a closed chat for residents. Someone to a lawyer friend. Someone to an activist from a neighbouring area. And then, as if someone pours kerosene on a long smouldering fire, the video ends up on Twitter. There, a 20-year-old girl from New York, a black activist who has been blogging about racism in everyday life for a long time, sees it and retweets it with the caption, "This is what it's like to be black and pregnant in America." He could have killed her. He wanted to. And he almost did. 50 views, 5,000, 9,800. 3 minutes later, the video gets into the algorithms. Keywords start working. Woman, attack, racism, dog, blood, pregnancy. Algorithms don't know emotions, but they know interest. And this interest spreads the video across feeds like a virus. In 20 minutes, 300,000 views. In an hour, almost 1 million. Comments fly like a bullet. He needs to be locked up. If it were a white woman, he would have been arrested already. Where are the cops? Where is the media? People are shocked. People are furious. People write, "I can't stop crying. I'm afraid to leave the house. This is my sister. This could have been my mother." The first hashtags appear. Justice for Lauren. Black Mothers Matter. Stop White Terror. Jasper the Protector. They become trends, first in local regions, then across the country, then internationally. People from Europe, Brazil, Canada, South Africa, They all comment, repost, are shocked. And in this avalanche of words, there appear those who poison the air. What was she even doing in this area? The dog needs to be put to sleep. It attacked a person. What if she hadn't provoked him? I'm sure he was just defending himself. Another black ass wants hype. More blacks, more problems. And these words, these vile, rotten, poisoned words fly there. Into the comments, into the discussions, and they are visible to everyone. And they become confirmation that what is happening is not an isolated incident, because the hatred comes out along with the support. And now everyone sees how deep it is. Someone writes, "I read this in history. I thought we were past this. And here it is again, alive, angry." Lawyers, volunteers, journalists appear. The calls to the police station begin. Where is the investigation? Why hasn't this man been detained? The police are silent at first. Then they say on duty, "We are studying the materials. An investigation is underway." But people don't want an investigation anymore. People want justice. Real, fast, uncompromising. The hunt begins. The man's name is found quickly. Someone recognizes him from a video, someone from a street recording, someone, a neighbor. His name, address, photo are leaked online. His past. And it is not clean. It turns out that this is not his first attack. That he used to spit at children, yell at mothers, throw stones at cars with BLM stickers. But before, he got away with it all, because no one filmed it. And now they do. Now there's proof, and they're screaming, "You can't hide anymore." His face is on every post. His name is on every thread. Someone posts a screenshot. "I'm his neighbor. He's always been a jerk. But now we won't let him walk down the street." And the video doesn't die. It doesn't disappear. It only gains momentum. People make art. Kids write letters to Jasper. Someone writes a song. A ballad about a dog who stands between evil and a woman. At that moment, the story stops being just a tragedy. It becomes a symbol. And the symbol is sharp as a knife. Simple. Obvious. Irrefutable. A woman. Black. Pregnant. Attacked. For no reason. Without defense. And only the dog stood up for her. That's it. And people watch. And they can't tear themselves away. Because they see themselves. Because they see America. Not the one shown in tourist brochures, but the one that wakes up every morning with hatred in its throat. And now everything depends on what happens next. But everyone already knows. He won't just leave. Because now there are millions behind her. And each of them demands, answer, now. Before we continue, let's take a short break. Write in the comments where you listen to our stories from, whether you have had similar moments in your life and how you dealt with them. We are interested in your opinion. If you like what we do, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss new stories. And now, let's continue. He didn't know what his fatal mistake was. Maybe it was the moment he turned around, looked at the video that had already been broadcast across the country, and realized that he could no longer be sure of his safety. His face, the face of an old, angry, prejudiced man who had seemed invisible, hidden in the shadows, invisible to the system, was now everywhere. The entire country knew his face, not as a hero, not as a fighter for justice, but as a man who, in his rage, had beaten a pregnant woman, her dog, threatened a life, and become a symbol of the hatred and racism and cruelty that permeates this country, his country. He sat in his chair, in his filthy house, not believing that this nightmare was his reality. And suddenly the question became unbearable. How had he let his life, his world, his certainty that he could get away with anything, crumble in an instant? It all happened faster than he could comprehend. First his name, then his address, photos, personal data. Investigations soon followed, and then articles, discussions, and shocked cries from every corner. A terrible star had entered his life, the federal authorities and local media. He thought that everything would be as usual. They would talk to him, maybe ask him several times to calm down and rest. But they would not touch him. But he was wrong. They would not touch him, but not because they did not know how to act. He was out of their sight, and now everyone recognized him. His face was on TV screens, in the news on every channel, in discussions on forums and social networks. Those who had previously ignored his usual hatred could not look away. The video was first, and his name sounded like a bolt from the blue. "There he is, the man," they said on the streets, in the shops, on every corner. And his face in these videos was already recognizable, memorable, known by sight to anyone who had followed the news at all. This was not a simple event. It was an event that changed the course of the conversation. All his previous actions, all his isolated attacks on his neighbors, humiliations, disregard for life, all of them became his death sentence. The curses he uttered under his breath suddenly began to ring in the ears of the entire city. Everyone heard them, and they could no longer ignore them. Sometimes it seemed as if his whole life was now only a preparation for putting it on screens and showing it to anyone who decided to watch. And people watched. People uploaded the video over and over again, asked about it on social media, sent it to friends, showed it to family, gave links to news articles. It seemed as if the world could no longer believe that it was true. But now no one could turn away. The first official comment came from the police with a meaningful but empty statement. "We have launched an investigation. All information will be verified." But the anger that raged in the comments, in the posts, in the texts, was too strong to simply disappear. Someone suggested setting his house on fire. Someone suggested giving him a merciless massacre. Someone simply wrote that they would not forgive him for what he had done, and that he should go to prison. "You all saw what he did. He tried to kill a woman, he tried to kill a dog. He was full of hate. This is a crime," they wrote in the comments. But the thing is, they weren't just demanding justice. They wanted revenge. They wanted to humiliate him. They wanted him to feel what Lauren felt as she lay in a pool of her own blood. The man who thought his hatred would touch no one was on the edge. He was like a trapped animal, and now everyone was catching him, tormenting him, tearing his life apart. The anger was more powerful than he could have imagined. Threats began to arrive on his phone. He couldn't walk down the street without being mocked and judged. His neighbors no longer hid from him. They looked at him with disgusting contempt, the same look he had once used on others. He had now become what he himself despised. He had become a symbol of what could not be forgiven. He soon realized that his life would never be the same. In this country, in this city, in this world, his name had become synonymous with racism and cruelty, and there was no turning back. The police finally arrested him. He was charged with assault, violence, racist threats, and human rights violations. But that was only the beginning. Now he was facing a trial, a public outcry, and not just the justice system, but his personal life was unraveling faster than he could comprehend. The ex-wife, who had previously managed to turn a blind eye to his blatant bias and hatred, had now abandoned him. The business he had been trying to build had collapsed. No one wanted to work with a man who had become a public symbol of violence, and that was just his little world. It was now clear to him that his name would no longer be associated with respect or normalcy. He had become someone everyone knew by name, someone whose actions had become part of a historical trauma. And when his face, when his name was shown in the news, when he was shown in the context of commentary where people were demanding justice, it became clear to him that there was no turning back for him. All he had left behind was the bitterness, the pain, the hatred he had spread. And now all of these consequences had led him to a fall from which there would be no rebound. He had become marginalized. His life was in the hands of society, and despite his protests and excuses, no one was listening to him anymore. People demanded action, and they got it. The protests continued. Social media was in full swing, and his life became increasingly isolated. There was no point in trying to fight. He knew he had lost. All he could do was realize how wrong he had been. The morning it all started was quiet, too quiet. Quiet in neighborhoods like this is a bad sign. It's like the calm before a fire, the last breath before a scream. The house he was hiding in was no longer his castle. It was a cage. He hadn't left since his face had appeared on the screens. He didn't go to the windows, didn't open the doors. He just stared at the monitor, checking how many people were still watching that damn video, how his name kept appearing in the headlines, how the tweets were calling him not just a monster, but the pure flesh of white anger. He started turning off his phones, then he pulled the plug. Then he turned off the lights, supposedly to be unnoticed. But it didn't help. On the second day, people started flocking to his house. First one, just standing on the corner, silent. Then two, with phones in their hands. Then 5, with signs. Then 20. Then 100. They were silent. They didn't scream. They just stood there, looking at his windows. On the fourth day, the loudspeakers came. Someone had put a speaker on the hood of a car and played a recording of his voice, his screams, his insults, cut from that very video. And they repeated themselves in a vicious circle like a curse. "Black bitch, get off my street!" It sounded over and over, muffled, vile, hoarse. He covered his ears, screamed, "Enough!" But no one heard him, or wanted to hear him. And then the night came, and with it, revenge. He didn't know who threw the first stone. Maybe it was a teenager. Maybe an old woman. Maybe someone who remembered Lauren. But his bedroom window exploded with the sound of a glass gunshot. He fell to the floor, clutching his head. The second stone flew into the kitchen, then into the hallway. Glass flew everywhere like sparks before a fire. Then someone poured paint on the porch, red, thick as blood. Someone wrote on his fence, "You are the face of hate." Someone on the asphalt in front of his house, "Justice is us." They didn't go inside. No, they didn't touch him with their hands. They burned him by not letting him hide from himself. He knew it wasn't just anger, it was the hatred he'd taught them. He'd planted it, and now it was growing. They didn't hit him. They watched, and that was worse. Every look, every phone call, every phrase spoken out loud was like a needle piercing his skin. Someone threw a bundle of feces at the door. Someone set fire to a newspaper and threw it in the mailbox. Then the protesters came with signs. He hit a pregnant woman. He hit a dog. Who's next? The girl next door drew a caricature on the pavement with chalk. Him, with a tail, with fangs, with the captions, "Racist, freak, coward." They no longer called him by name. He became a symbol, a label, a scarecrow, a beast. He tried to call the police. The police did not come. They said, "An investigation is underway. We do not interfere." And he was left alone, in the crowd. It was a new form of justice, without a trial, without lawyers, without mitigating circumstances. Just the street, which looked back. One day, he came out onto the porch, at night, with a bottle, shouting for everyone to leave, shouting that it was not his fault, that she climbed in on herself, that the dog was rabid, that the video was edited, but no one left. They only recorded it. His drunken voice, his screams, his dirty excuses. And the next morning his screams were already on TikTok, with thousands of comments. Someone wrote, "Watch a star fade away on live TV." Someone else wrote, "That's right. Let him feel at least a little bit of what our women feel every day." He started to lose his mind. He talked to the TV. He stopped sleeping. He wrote on the walls with a marker, "It's not my fault." He heard footsteps that weren't there, voices that no one spoke, and the street continued to stand still. People came in shifts. Someone brought tea. Someone brought stools. Someone turned on music. Songs about justice, about pain, about anger. He became a show. And the show went on. His family turned their backs on him. His lawyer refused to defend him. He remained a nobody, the one he thought Lauren was. The irony worked perfectly. He became the one he humiliated. Lonely, helpless, pathetic, hated. And then, on the 7th night, someone brought a puppy, a small one, with a bandage on his paw, and he put it right next to his porch. Without words, he just put a box next to him with the inscription, "Even this dog is better than you." And everyone watched silently as he opened the door, as he looked at the puppy, as he stepped back, as he slammed the door. There was silence inside, and outside, justice. Not what comes by law, but what comes by conscience. And that night he realized, the revenge of the street is not rage, it is a mirror, in which you see who you are. And if you have nothing to show, the street will show for you, without words, without weapons, only with a look. Before we continue, let's take a short break. Write in the comments where you listen to our stories from, whether you have had similar moments in your life and how you dealt with them. It is important for us to hear your opinion. If you like what we do, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss new stories. And now, let's continue. The white ceiling greeted her with silence. Not the indifferent hospital silence that patients get used to, but a different kind. Deep, cold, merciless. The kind that makes you want to turn away, but you don't even have the strength to do that. Lauren was lying in intensive care under an oxygen mask, with tubes, needles, sensors all over her body, like a puppet in the hands of machines on which her life and the life of the man she carried under her heart for 6 months depended. She couldn't feel her arms. She couldn't feel her legs. Only a dull pulsation in her lower abdomen, where the pain came in waves, like someone's hand pressing on a wound from the inside. The doctor's voices were fragmentary, their phrases short, emotionless, pulses unstable. Shock, threat to the fetus, internal bleeding, blood clots, may not survive. And it all sounded as if they weren't talking about her, not about a living person, but about something statistical, temporary, burdensome. In this white box, soaked in bleach and indifference, Lauren was a nobody. She heard their conversations through her half-sleep, through the morphine, through the pain. But what hurt most was not the diagnosis. It was the pauses between the words, the glances that didn't look into the eyes, but passed by. The doctors were white, almost all of them. The nurses were white too. And although no one uttered a single harsh word, she felt everything. In the intonations, in the timbre, in the silence. Another one of those. With the belly again. A dog? My God, of course, one paramedic said in the hallway, thinking that they could no longer hear her. Why did she even go there with that dog? She's pregnant, and she's provoking me. Then they're fucking victims. Someone chuckled in response. Someone remained silent, but no one objected. In their heads, she was already guilty. Because she was black, because she was pregnant without a ring, because she lay there bleeding, not like a heroine, but like typical. In their eyes, she was not Lauren. She was a problem, an accident, another checkmark on a report. There was no one next to her. No mother, dead. No sisters, gone. No father, he left when she was 7. No one, except for the dog, who was not allowed into the building. Jasper waited under the windows. According to the orderlies, he did not leave. Even when they tried to drive him away, he came back. He sat, watched, howled at night. One of the young medics said, "I would have let him in to see her. She needs him more than we do." But they only laughed at him. And inside, Lauren, everything was breaking. The doctors argued over what to do, save the mother or the child. One suggested a cesarean. Another, wait. A third, observe. No one asked her. She was in serious condition. Out of process, out of choice, out of rights, and every minute felt like an hour. There was a war going on inside her. Her uterus was contracting. Blood was dripping. The baby was freezing. She tried to call him, with her mind, her voice, her instinct, but she felt nothing, only emptiness, as if everything inside had gone empty. She remembered stroking her belly in the mornings, how she whispered, "You are strong. You are mine. We can do it." She remembered how afraid she was, and how hopeful she was. And now there was only darkness, and the same conversations again. In the doctor's office, behind the glass. "I think if there is no improvement, we will terminate. But the mother is alive. She can stabilize. Too weak. The fetus is not viable. Protocol. We are following protocol. A protocol where she is not a person, where her child is not a life, but a prognosis, where everything is decided by paper, fear, a system that is not for her, not for people like her. Because when she was taken to the hospital, no one met her gaze. No one said, "We are with you." No one said, "You are important." Only the cold, only masks, only the patient has been admitted. And she, Lauren, was dying. And not only in her body, but also in her heart, because the world she lived in had now shown its true face, finally, without a mask, without a filter. And she saw, if she died, no one would be surprised. Only Twitter would write a few lines. Only the video would be played for a couple more days, and then they would forget, like thousands of others like her. Because she was not white, not rich, not convenient. She was a witness, and witnesses are not liked. They interfere with the picture, which means they must disappear. And she understood it. She understood it in every drop of pain, in every breath, in every look that was hidden from her. And still, she didn't give up, because there was still someone inside her. One more heartbeat, one more chance, and she squeezed it as best she could, at least with her thoughts, at least with her desire, at least with her prayer. And she repeated, "I won't let them take you. I won't let them win." Even if she herself was almost gone. The hospital was like a cage, white walls, stern faces, white coats, silence broken by nothing but the echo of footsteps and the cicadas of cars stuck in traffic jams on the street. Lauren no longer felt her body. She felt only a slight heaviness in her chest, like an empty shell that those around her were trying to fill. Blood, oxygen, machines, sounds. Her life was no longer hers. She heard the doctors, their words, but she no longer understood their meaning. Stabilized. Shock. No fetus. If there are no changes, termination. But she had only one thing: fear. Fear for the child who had been inside her for so long, and for herself. But the worst thing was not that she could lose her child. The worst thing was that she had already lost her faith that this world would protect her. When it all happened, when she was lying bleeding on the pavement, when the man was beating her and the dog, when no one intervened, when her pain was accepted as something inevitable, she understood that there was no place for her in this world. There was no justice for her. There was no understanding for her. This was not just a fight for life, it was a fight for herself. And perhaps this fight had already been lost, but there she was, lying in a hospital bed, and every new breath became difficult. Not because she wanted to die, but because she felt her world crumbling, her life disappearing, invisible even to those who were close. And at that moment, when pain and fear squeezed her heart, when she was almost losing consciousness from weakness, when it seemed to her that she would see his face again, the one who started all this, the one who beat her and her dog, when it seemed to her that this was all the end, something unexpected burst into her consciousness, a voice, a man's voice. At first, as soft as a whisper, then louder. "She's alive," someone said. "She survived. She's staying with us." It wasn't a doctor's voice. It was a voice that cut through everything. A voice she hadn't expected to hear, but that changed everything. It was the voice of the neighbor from the other building, the one who'd stood at the window filming the whole thing a few days earlier, who'd failed to intervene in the fight, who'd failed to come out to help, but who'd now taken the plunge. It was her neighbor, a middle-aged woman who worked for a local organization that had long been working on issues of racism and violence. She was the one who couldn't stand by any longer. She'd watched men and women, victims of violence, break down and die, and she'd thought that she could be one of them if she stayed silent. But she hadn't. And now, with Lauren's life hanging in the balance, with everything seemingly lost, she decided to act. She saw Lauren's video go viral, saw the world turn upside down, saw justice come true. She saw people gather in the streets, demanding the truth, throwing stones, emptying their hearts of hate. And she saw in each of their eyes, this wasn't just a case. This was a story that could be turned around. She knew she had to intervene. She knew Lauren wouldn't be alone. Soon, More footage appeared on social media. Lauren began to recover, and yet, even though everything was still difficult, even though her body wasn't yet strong enough to carry on, she felt her strength return with every step. When she finally woke up, when the light became more than just a blur for her again, when the world found color again, she knew she couldn't go back. Because everything was different now. She was no longer just a victim. She had become a symbol of women who were tired of being silent, a symbol of mothers who were always strong, no matter what. She opened her eyes and knew that not all was lost. All this time, she thought that her life would no longer have meaning, but she was wrong. Because now she knew that if she survived, if she stayed, if she came back, her voice would be heard. Her story would not end, would not fade, would not disappear. She would fight. And she would not just fight for herself. She would fight for all those who still could not get justice. For those who had lost, who had been abused, who had suffered. She opened her eyes, and for the first time, she felt her heart fill with strength again. This was a turning point that forced her to face not only her fear, but all the hatred she had faced. Lauren knew that the most important thing now was to keep fighting. And she would fight, not just for herself, but for all those stories that had been silent for so long. And when people appeared in her room again, when the rehabilitation therapy began, when doctors, activists, acquaintances began to come again, she understood that this moment was not the end. It was a new beginning. And now she was ready to live. The whole world saw her, and it was no longer outside. Its eyes were open again. For everyone who could watch and become part of this story. What do you think about this story? Have you ever experienced racism or injustice in your life? Your opinion is very important to us, and we appreciate each of you sharing your thoughts and supporting us. We remind you that your opinion and your comments are of great importance to us. Subscribe to our channel, like it if you enjoyed it, and do not forget that we are always ready to hear from you. We wish you a good day, and may it be full of light and justice. Write the phrase, "Fight for Truth" in the comments so that we know that you listened to the end.